Returning to the Willow City Council special meeting closed session. The council received information from the legal staff, and we have provided direction to the staff and the council. That's with regard to the case of Guzman versus the City of Willows. Moving to the consent calendar, all matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are approved by one motion, one vote, unless council members or the city manager first request that the matter be removed for separate discussion and action. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning consent calendar items or regard matters which are not already on the agenda are invited to make oral comments up to 3 minutes at this time. Please address your comments to the mayor and the council members, not to staff in the audience. By state law, the council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. If you have documentation you'd like distributed to the city council, please provide it to our city clerk, Amos Hoover. Item 6A is rescind hiring freeze of finance and HR specialist. And item 6B, planning commission appointments. Is there any public comment? Thank you.
On the consent calendar?
Mr. Mayor, for the record, my name is Jeff Williams. First off, I want to thank Amos for the Zoom. It works excellent. The sound was perfect. Matter of fact, it works better on Zoom than it does in here, but it's working good now. And thank Mr. Bettencourt. I listened to and watched the last Zoom meeting on Monday, and appreciate your professionalism.
Thank you.
Well-spoken young man. What you see in front of you, gentlemen, is a copy of an email in regards to the panel solar panels. Now, all I'm going to do is mention the fact is that what concerns me is that as far as I know,
This is not on the consent calendar.
what's that?
No, this is
not even
public
gonna
comment,
discuss-
and this is actually with
Yeah.
probably regard to the existing solar
Oh, no,
array.
actually, I'm going to go off script. My concern is what I want to speak about is the fact that this happened, and how is it that it never got caught until at least 2019? And that's my concern is everybody says, well, we're asking too many questions. And as far as I'm concerned, the past city council, city staff was negligent because they didn't inform the city council that I know of, Gary. I think he was on the council when this all started the solar project. But what I want to address is the fact that what are we going to do to prevent this type of thing from happening again, regardless of whether it's a solar or whether it's anything else? What kind of checks and balances are we going to have to protect the citizens? And that's my comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's on the agenda, correct?
No, actually,
was just-
this would be something prior to, that's history of the original solar, which is not on the agenda tonight.
Okay.
Any other public comment on the consent calendar? Council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, move to approve item 6A and 6B as presented.
Second. A motion by Councilmember Hanson and seconded by Councilmember Hudson to approve 6A and 6B. I think I'd like to make the comment before the vote. It would seem that our action to put a hiring freeze on that position was premature based on the cost of services that we were paying for payroll and other items. That this is actually going to be a city. Is that not correct?
I think it'll be like a wash. probably, or, close to a wash. So, I mean, by the time you roll up somebody's costs of health insurance, CalPERS, and the salary, it's going to be about the same as the payroll and business licenses, I'd say.
Okay. Any other comment? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, discussion and action calendar. All matters in this section of the agenda are discussed and acted upon individually. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning any of these items are invited to make oral comments up to 3 minutes at this time. Please address your comments to the mayor and the council members. And I just read this so you all know, and I will defer if you have comments, provide or material, deliver it to our city clerk. Letter of intent for solar power purchase agreement. Go.
Yep. Good afternoon, council. So this is, may seem like a familiar item to you that was brought back in February of 23. I'm going to go over the major differences first from that agreement to where we're at right now. Originally, what was brought on the 23rd was to have a buyout by Trinary Capital over the current Clearway system. That did not end up going through. That solar panel was going to be removed and a new installation by Trinary. So the current plan is to, since that buyout did not go through, is to build a supplemental solar array panel at the wastewater treatment plant that will bring the kilowatts per hour up to enough solar production to cover the energy needed by the wastewater treatment plant in its entirety. The second part of it too, this also includes a roof mount solar system for the fire department and for the civic center. And Trinary Capital is willing to do a roof replacement at no cost to the city for that. And those systems are designed, I believe at 110% of the current use of those facilities as well. So this is a letter of intent, not the power purchase agreement. We're currently in review with the Council of Trinary Capital to redline and make comments with their power purchase agreement. What this would allow us to do would lock us into the 18-cent kilowatt rate for these projects. We've got an upcoming deadline of January 1st where these projects will be subject to prevailing wage where they haven't been in the past, which would most likely create a cost increase based on the increased cost of the construction by Trinary Capital. A lot of it is the same that was presented to you back in February, where we would not be the owners. We would simply buy all of the power generated by the solar facility at 18 cents a kilowatt from Trinary Capital. They would install and maintain the system. And the big difference on the maintenance part as well, there's several differences legally, but one of the main differences on the maintenance is that we have a 90% output that will be guaranteed. So basically, if our solar generation goes below 90% of the expected, that they would compensate us up to 90% of that at the per kilowatt hour price of 18 cents. So we've got a little more guarantee that if we fall below a certain percent of production, that we'll be compensated for that. And then there's stronger language in there in the contract itself on them coming out and working on the solar panels. And I've got Jeff Wiseman here from Trinary Capital that may be able to answer any additional questions that you guys may have that I can't. One other thing that I'll mention is regarding the NIM 2. Trinary Capital, when they responded to our RFP, went ahead and locked in our NIM 2 rate. So we are locked into NIM 2 for the fire department and for the civic center. Unfortunately, we didn't get that done with the wastewater treatment plant as negotiations fell through, and that wasn't able to be completed in time. So it'll be on the new NBT system.
It'll be on, like, say that again.
It's, I believe it's NBT. It's basically the NIM 3, a newer version of it. Jeff can probably speak better to it than me, but basically one of the main things is you can't roll credits forward from the summertime to use for wintertime production. So, but we would have that ability with the NIM 2 on the fire department and the civic center. And I'll take any questions with that.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. Does the public wish to address the council at this time? Yes. Yes, you do. Address the council, please.
Okay. I am Timothy Holdeman. I own Smart Gen Builders Incorporated in Willows here. And I've been taking an active interest in the solar out south of town here. And maybe I'm behind the times a bit, but is there a reason why we would forget about the old system? As Willows flushed with money? I've always done a solar system with a very conservative approach. A lot of things out there, people say, well, I want a carport, well, I want this, and fine, we're not even really offsetting the electricity, well, we're just building stuff. You know, and the reason solar makes sense is to be very efficient and very conservative with what you're working with, yet getting the outcome you need. I, on the other hand, have we tried to look at other financing options? And there's tax leases that I can get all day long for negative interest rates, and they will gladly take on the lease, and you'll own the system with very competitive pricing. What I found out with a lot of power purchase agreements is that it's a wonderful thing to say that they're going to take care of it, but as we've seen in the past, they failed that mark considerably, because power purchase agreements are owned by private sectors, third parties they know nothing about maintenance, and they fully depend on the contractor to follow through with that. And that's where the breakdown happens. That's my only concern, that they don't take another round of it. And they're from down south a long ways, and how they're gonna maintenance from down there is my only concern on that. But as far as the financing, and my approach would be to that whole job would be to go out there, look at that system, see what needs to be fixed, replace it, because solar panels don't just go shot. It's the only thing that really goes shot in an old solar system is the sun tracker. I would fix it to be a fixed array. I'd rewire it, put new PV wire, new inverters to put a warranty on it. And then I would add the system, the extra system. But you'd have to consider, if you're not going to use the old system, is that what they do, not use the old system?
We are using the old
The old
system.
system, but
This new system, as I understand it, is now generating about 45%
45%?
of what our energy use is. And it was designed for about 50% of our.
And what would the payment be on that?
Payment beyond.
On the existing system? or
On the new system you're going to propose?
New system is supplementing the existing.
It's 18 cents a kilowatt for the first year with a 3% inflation factor.
But you have to make a payment, a payment, right?
We're gonna pay for the amount of solar produced by our facility that's owned by Trinity Capital.
So there's not going to be no payment,
Zero payment.
no
That's not-
payment to the system at all.
No.
Unlike Clearway, which is the existing system, which we do, pay,
Right.
but not a good deal for this.
I thought I seen a payment of $18,000 on the new plan.
That's the estimated monthly payment for the generation of the solar at 18 cents a kilowatt.
And is there an escalator, a 3% escalator?
Correct.
2.99%.
It's how much?
2.99%.
2.99%. Yeah, I know I'm playing with that. Well, I wish I could have assessed it and investigated it to give you a better offer. I just think there's a lot of loopholes that you're trusting entirely a company down south to do entirely. And you hope and pray that they don't screw the town over again. And that's just my concern as a citizen in this town.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
Roberta Asbury. I would like to know how the negotiations broke down. We got it through for the library and fire department, but yet we couldn't do it for the sewer. I'd like to know what happened there. And also, why are we down to the gun here again on getting this done? This is no way to do business. It's not like we didn't know this was coming up. Where was everybody?
Hopefully we can get some answers to that this evening.
Mayor, or we allowed to ask questions as this discussion goes on? Are we going to be able to ask more questions?
What
Because right
I-
now, we don't even have any information.
Well,
on
I
the
get that. So I will call for public comment after,
Okay, thank you.
after we have presentation, not during.
Yeah, that's fine. I think this was brought up at the last time that we spoke about this, which was February 21st. But the company Primary will put on a new roof that's not leaking, but we was told at the last minute that the roof on the fire department is leaking. And that doesn't make any sense to install a new roof on a building that isn't leaking. What are we going to do when they put solar on the other roof? Where are we going to get the money to put the roof on there? And like Roberta just mentioned, when this was brought to council on February 14th, it was another one of these things. Oh, we've got to do it now because there's not adequate time so that we get into the NIMS too. I've been asking for an update on this for several months now on this solar project. Now it is very end of the year. You got to make a decision out of desperation. That's not a good place to make a decision. So I'll wait on the rest of this. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we hear from Trinary?
Jeff, are you on?
Yes, I am. Hello,
Hi, this is-
everyone.
This is Marty. You wanna?
I'm Marty.
How you doing?
Not bad. Just like to say, if the connection is a little spotty, and this also kind of illustrates our commitment to you as a client, I'm calling you from Guangzhou, China. I'm over here getting married to my wife, but I'm taking this call because that's how important this account is to my company. So if I cut out, don't blame me. Feel free to blame the Chinese government. That being said, happy to answer any questions that I can.
I can't understand it.
He said that he said that he's in China getting married, but he is here on the Zoom to try to answer any questions that he can, because this is important to Trinary Capital. And does the council have any specific questions for him?
Well, I would have the specific question is, we did have a conversation with Trinary in February, and we have now approached December without any movement on this. And my grave concern would be that we get this moving forward in 2024, and then we have this large continuing delay in getting it installed, and every day we buy power from PG&E is substantially higher. So what is the process from Trinary to get this built and installed if we were to
Jeff,
go
did you hear
forward?
that?
I did, yes. So one of the issues that happened is that the bank that we were working with was SunWest Bank. And if you all remember, in the first week of March, there were 3 banks that failed in the United States. Coupled with rising interest rates, that led to a credit freeze. That affected funding across the board for all projects that we were using with SunWest Bank. SunWest Bank has modified their business model where they no longer are specifically interested to an extent in new financing of solar projects. So we went to find other funding partners. We have found other funding partners. They are sitting on about $1.2 billion that they would like to deploy into high quality projects like the city of Willows. And we are ready to move forward. We live in a world of competitive money and finance, and this project ran into issues due to the fact that financing in general in America ran into funding issues. So here we are. Now, if I could speak a little bit to the time delay, one of the issues that we've also had is that we did a very deep dive into your Clearway contract. I actually spoke to Clearway directly with Marty on the phone. Our CEO was also there, Jeremy Horton. What became apparent is that Clearway does not want to easily give up their contract. So the way around this is to build a system to help you that'll lower your costs to supplement the fact that your system is, to put it delicately operating at a suboptimal level. Our contract is different than theirs. Ours is production based. We also have guarantees. We're backed by Lotus Infrastructure Partners through their subsidiary company, Radial Power. Lotus Infrastructure Partners is the new name for what is known as Starwood Capital. Starwood Capital is the Starwood Group. They own a significant amount of hotels, leisure properties, et cetera, but they're extraordinarily interested in infrastructure and renewable power. So that's our capital backed partner. As far as a company down south, yes, we're in Long Beach. That is true. The vast majority of our projects are in the Central Valley, up by you. So we may have an office down south, but most of our business is in the heart of Central California.
I also wanted to just point out to the council that Sean Cameron, our deputy city attorney, is also on this call, and he reviewed the power purchase agreement, which will be coming back to the council, as I mentioned in the email that went to the council earlier today. He reviewed that in great detail. So if the council wants to ask any questions about any of the insurances on the city's part to ensure that we're going to be covered and taken care of in this agreement, he's on the call on the Zoom as well to answer any questions if the council has any.
Well, when we discussed this in February, one of the things I asked for, because of the issues we've had with Clearway, and they've sold it, that we would get some sort of performance bond or guarantee should the transact to the solar system be sold, so we would know for sure that it gets maintained. Is that possible in this contract?
I think, Sean, are you on there?
I am.
If I'm not mistaken, the current drafted PPA has information in it that would require if Trinary, for example, sold the system, that all of the measures that we put into place in the PPA would carry over to any new buyer. Is that correct? And that they can't be changed unless both parties agree to any changes?
I believe that that's the case. Yeah, I'd have to dig into the agreement to sort of parse that out. But generally that's the way agreements work. Yeah, if somebody was to, take this over, then they would take over the agreement as well, including all the parts of it.
So the previous draft that we had of PPA, that was how it was written when we brought it in February. It was written to say that if Trinary for any reason was going to sell the system, that everything that was in our agreement that we agreed to with them carries over to a new buyer. And we put that in this PPA that the council will be seeing hopefully next month, if not in February at the latest, has that same carryover policy.
Well, that would be pretty much standard contract language. My concern is performance under that contract by the successor purchaser.
We
What
have,
maintenance
there are
system.
measures in the
So we'd have to
contract.
file suit or pursue them, and if they don't do it, then we're struggling. And I'm trying to avoid having that situation.
Well, it's
If
my
there's a way we
understanding
can
it's in there.
do something.
Everything in the contract would transfer, and I think with the Clearway contract as well, when it started, correct me if I'm wrong, nothing's changed. The original contract just didn't have any teeth in it or any way for us to get a hold of them and make them come out and do this. And of course, yeah, litigation is the next step in any business transaction when a contract we feel is breached. But the contract was written originally so weak itself. I don't think we had that option to do that, and I think we will with this. But yes, it's all transferable. Everything that's executed in this contract, if that's what the council chooses to do and we get the PPA and you'll be able to review that when it's in front, would go on to the additional sellers. And the other big difference is they've got a guarantee of that it has to produce 90% written in the contract. In the Clearway contract, it states owner is providing no warranty or guarantee to any particular level of energy output, right in the contract. So there's no expectation of you're going to meet this or that or the other. It's here's your panels and we will try to maintain them to the best of our ability.
Which has been the problem all along. So I just want to, for the public's sake in particular, I want to remind the council that this letter of intent was, the idea is to lock in our kilowatt rate with Trinary before the end of the year, because starting January 1, the government's going to require, the state is going to require any third party that's doing business with a public agency to pay prevailing wage. So we're trying to lock in this rate now, but the power purchase agreement will come back to the council after the first of the year.
Okay, thank you. Council
So-
members?
Let me understand that better. So if we agree to do this tonight, we're just locking in the rate. But we're not committed to the contract until we see the contract in June or January, and then we either can reject the contract or accept the contract. Is that what I understand?
There's language in there that states that we're going to make every best effort to move forward with these current rates. And the motion is to approve authorization of the letter of intent. So yeah, there's certain agreements that are listed in that LOI, but a full PPA would come back to you.
Yeah, one of the things that caught my eye in here is on page number 8. City of Willows agrees to keep and treat the specific terms and conditions contained in this proposal on a confidential basis. What does that mean? That we shouldn't even be talking about this?
No, that was brought up earlier. We've addressed that. It was struck out in the actual PPA that's at review for them. We just didn't get it adjusted in the
Say
LOI.
that again.
So it's been redlined in the actual PPA, that statement, as we're a public agency and we can't do that. We will strike it from the LOI before we execute this, because that should not be in there. That was something that was missed in there, but it has been dealt with in the draft revision sent to back to Trinary.
Yeah, Mayor, this is Sean. I would also, I would strike that last sentence or paragraph in this statement of interest to move forward. And I would also, speaking to the other council members' statement, in the first or the second sentence, I would add that shall draft the definitive PPA agreement for the city of Willows to negotiate and execute, to make it clear that this is, that we're going to be negotiating a future agreement. That they
Nicholas,
won't.
could you turn that down just a touch? I think that
Something
might make it a little bit easier to hear.
Did you guys catch that?
Yeah, he's changing on the third, essentially the second sentence, which is the third line in the statement of intent. He's changing it from City of Willows to review and execute to City of Willows to negotiate and execute.
What page are you
Page 8. Same one.
on?
Sorry,
section
I'd
one.
actually change the first sentence would read, by signing below, City of Willows accepts this PPA proposal and agrees to move forward with the negotiation and signing of a definitive PPA agreement. So in the first sentence, I would add the word negotiation so that it just makes it abundantly clear that negotiations are to follow this letter of intent.
A distinction between that we're reviewing back and forth instead of just executing the original that they gave us on the
Yep.
PPA.
No, that
Right.
makes sense. I do have one question for you on that. In the 18-cent kilowatt, if it doesn't produce the 90% like we're agreed to, and that's a month-by-month basis, or is that going to be an annual?
That is a true up, an annual true up.
Annual, okay. On that, my understanding is you will then pay us back up to that 90% guarantee at 18 cents. Now on, let's say year 5, where that 18 cents that we're paying you has been increased by that 2.99% over those past 5 years, well, if we're not hitting that 90% goal, will we be paid back at that same rate, or will it just be the 18%?
18.
It's-
Or 18 cents, sorry,
It'd be the rate of the previous year.
the rate of the previous year.
Yep. So
Okay.
upon review, if it was up 4 cents, it would be that rate.
So for example, I don't know exactly what it'd be at. If it was at 23 cents, then we'd be paid back at that 23 cents.
Yeah,
Okay.
if it was 89%, you'd be getting 1% at 28 cents, whatever
Okay.
kilowatt.
It is
that is.
based on the prior year's rate.
The prior year's rate. Yep, that makes, nope, I understand that. Okay. I just want to
If
make
I
sure that
could-
we weren't hitting
if I
year
could-
25.
I have.
If
a
I could
question. You're done.
just, sorry.
This is Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
If I could just tell the council what we do is we will provide for you a schedule for every year, broken down out over 25 years, what each year you will be expected to be paying at that time. And also additionally, we will be submitting in the PPA, there will be a production guarantee, and that will have a schedule of production. Should we drop below that 90%, yes, we will honor the terms of the contract, but also that means that we're going to come out and we're going to fix it, make sure that we hit those production numbers. Because for us, think of it on our side, when we're deploying capital, we want to deploy capital into revenue generating assets that are performing as stated. And if we're not hitting those numbers, that is either an equipment problem that must be addressed, or that is something in engineering that we need to fix, because we want to be in the business of selling you power at a reduced rate, right?
Of course,
So
that
that's
question
why we
wasn't
make the-
necessarily aimed towards you. It was just in general, because I know if, let's say you're at 85%, that extra 5%, we're paying PG&E rates. So I'm trying to figure out how much you're offsetting that PG&E rate that would be paying. That was my only question. It was more directed to discuss the general numbers, nothing against you guys. But no, I do appreciate that.
Forrest, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of questions here, and I'm trying to reconcile this whole thing with what we've got with Clearwave Energy and so on, looking back at the last 6 months of our check register and what we've paid going back to June, we paid $122 to Clearwave for that month. July, we paid $11,648. September, we paid 28,000 some odd dollars. October, we paid a little over 12,000. If I recall correctly on your memo last time at our last meeting, it was about $10,000 for that month. So how reconcile what this is going to cost? And well, let me first ask, what is, you're using 18 cents and then however many kilowatts, what does that work out to be on a monthly basis on a typical month for us with Trinary?
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it would be about 18,000 if I'm correct.
18,000, you think?
Well, dependent for the trinary system, but then we've got a cost with the Clearway system as well. So,
Right, that's what I'm getting at. So, okay, so with
so about 236,000 a year, I would say. So,
okay, I'm looking at months at this point. So you're thinking about 18,000 a month with Trinary.
yeah, I got about 236,000 a year. I can do the math on
Okay,
that for you.
that's fine. But what are we going to be, or are we going to still then be paying Clearway for a portion of the system that's down there now?
That is correct. We are not able to get out of the Clearway contract. So there's no teeth in it for the city, and that we've visited this before, as the council might recall. So there isn't really, and we've looked at it several times, there's really no way for the city other than to buy out Clearway, which would be over $1 million.
How much?
Over $1 million. I don't remember
I
off the
think
top of my head.
1.3, 1.2, something.
Yeah,
that
that
neck
sounds
of
about
woods.
right. Yeah.
So what are we going to then have these bills with Clearway that are anywhere from $28,000 a month to $12,000 a month?
For 7 more years. Yeah.
And we're still at currently 24 cents a kilowatt on the Clearway schedule.
And, okay.
So PG&E on the peak hours is 60 cents a kilowatt and 34 cents an off peak. So when
Okay,
you-
so and we will still have a PG&E bill as well?
no
No PG&E bill goes away all.
not if the
altogether.
solar produces as
Well, I mean,
indicated at 110%.
there may be a small PG&E if Clearway, if we continue to have the problems we've had with Clearway, right? I mean, we just had last year, they didn't produce for 8 months. And I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen again in the next 7 years, but I can't be sure. I don't think anybody can be sure. And if they drop below, they don't have any guarantees in their agreement. And we will have some small, I think, true-up bill from PG&E if they drop below what they're producing now.
Yeah.
That is possible.
It's always a possibility. I'm currently, and Jeff brought in, year one, it looks like we produced 641,000 kilowatt hours. And currently we're at the 500,000 mark, and that's 13 years into this. So the panels at current rate are probably pretty on par to where they should be, barring any major breakdown. The actual production is pretty good at this point in time.
Because
Well,
it was
I
never
thought
intended
you
to,
Suggested it was about 47%.
Of the total produced power of the wastewater treatment plant, which was the original design of that
Okay,
size of a
but you're
system.
thinking that the system itself is up, even though it's only providing
So-
less than 50% of the.
well,
that's
it
what
it
it
was
was
never,
designed.
it was never designed to build, to offset 100% of the PG&E power at the wastewater. It was designed for about 50%.
Yes,
So it's at 47%.
designed for 50%.
So
Right.
in
Production.
2021, we produced 549,000, and you can see the first year was at 641. So those are,
So can I get some clarification? Is this new contract, are they going to be maintaining the Clearway system then as well, or? so we're
No,
still gonna
nothing to
with
do
it?
with
We,
it.
we cannot
Okay.
touch Clearway at all.
Then-
They are
then I-
entirely in control of,
Then my next question is how does this benefit the city? Where's, you're saying it's gonna cost us $236,000 a year for this system. What's our current PG&E at per year for the
If-
city?
If we use
Last
the,
year it was 238,000.
well, that was the true up
the
with
true
the,
up was 280,000 this year. this
How
past-
much?
280,000 was the true up bill,
280,000?
Yes.
So if
because
there's
we had
so-
about 6 or 7 months where
no production.
there was no production from Clearway.
Okay, so with their system being running at 110%, it should, in theory, take away our PG&E bill and be about a cost savings of about 50,000 a year for the city.
I would,
If we're
I would,
looking at a trip of 280 and they're costing us 236.
yeah, if we gented the, yeah, I would say more than that.
Okay.
I'd anticipate it. If we look at, I calculated about 28% in peak time and 72% in off-peak time, just based off of a year history.
Right.
And if we generated all the energy that we currently are and are promised and hit our mark with them, we'd have a savings of around $200,000.
A year?
Yep.
Or through the contract?
Yep.
What do we pay right now? What's the PG&E?
Yeah, it's 60 cents per kilowatt
Per
per
kilowatt.
peak, and then 34 for it. And on the front page of the,
Versus 18 cents.
Versus 18, right, that's what
So,
I was,
I mean,
because right now Clearway means nothing to me because it's a contract we're stuck in.
right.
And that's a
correct.
conversation for a different time. I'm strictly talking, how is this going to benefit the city? And that's what I want to know.
Yep.
And like you said, it is on here. It says peak, I think it's 60 cents per kilowatt. They're offering it to us for 18. To me, that's a 2/3 savings. So,
and they do have a number on the, and this would include wastewater treatment plant, fire department, and civic center.
Right, there'll be additional savings that we didn't originally, when we first started talking to Trinary, didn't anticipate, which will be the offset for the energy at the Civic Center and the fire station, which will now be part of this. So that there'll be additional savings there to the PG&E bills that we have here at these two buildings.
and did you say the roofs would be replaced on both buildings or just one of them?
We've discussed this roof only.
Just only
Just
this
this
roof
roof?
here, yeah, so that we can make sure that we can hold the capacity of the solar panel.
It has
Yeah.
to be done in
Yeah.
order to do the.
Right.
plans.
And that will be rolled into the cost, the kilowatt rate. The cost of the roof will be rolled into that, so that there will be no upfront cost for the city. For the
And
roof.
then I have one more question. Then when it comes time, let's say in the next 25 years, we have to replace the fire department's roof. What's your guys' stance on moving the solar panels? Is that something that we have to go through you to have a contractor you guys recommend to replace the roof? Is that something that you send out your crew to remove the panels? We have the roofers come in? How would that work out?
Jeff, that question was directed to you.
Okay. So in council member, in a situation like that, you would inform us that you want it to be replaced
Mhm.
through friendly negotiations, right? And this is part of the lease agreement that we have for the roof itself, usually. If you need us to move it, we would come in and we would move it. If you want to move it, we would just want to be made aware of who is doing that and make sure that they're professional and meet up to the certification standards so that nothing is damaged of the equipment on our end, right? But we would be more than happy to work with you should you choose someone, or we would do it ourselves. And then the roof is replaced, and then we would come in and put this back. So all of that language is in the lease agreement. That
The actual
is
contract itself?
an additional part of the PPA. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's subject to negotiation, the final PPA.
Okay,
negotiation.
sounds great.
I
Thank
mean,
you.
if the council wants to direct us to somehow work, because like I said, the PPA is going to come back to the council to work with Trinary on language that benefits the city in terms of replacing the fire station roof in the future. And I'm happy to do that. But we're still working on the details, as you know. This is a letter of intent
Right.
tonight before you.
Nope, I get it. I just, like I said, I just want to ask the questions though, at least now, so that I have nothing further.
Yeah,
I'm
Oh,
No,
satisfied.
sorry.
You, I wasn't quite done.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What I'm not clear on is actually who owns this. There's going to be an installing company, I forget, started with a B.
barrier solar.
Thank you. Who is actually going to be the ownership or has the ownership of the array of the system itself?
I believe Trinary
Okay.
Capital.
Capital.
I'm sorry,
Trinary Capital.
Trinary Capital owns it. And so any maintenance needs, then they're going to be responsible.
100%.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And the
That's when, yes,
reason
we
Clearway isn't
maintain it.
responsible for theirs is because they're just the leasing company. They're not, they don't own it. Is that what I understand?
Who's the leasing company? I'm sorry.
No,
Clearway.
and on Clearway,
Yeah, Clearway.
there's that contract when it was executed did not provide for, clarify who would maintain it. There was no guarantee. It's a poor contract for the city.
It's a 95-page contract. I agree. It was never approved by the city attorney. It was
It's a
signed
poor-
only
it's
by
a
the
poor contract for the city.
Right, I agree. I agree with that, but again, okay, so that's the point is they own it. They
Correct.
do
Clearway
own it,
owns
but
it.
they don't have to maintain it.
It's been a struggle to get them to maintain it. Absolutely.
Okay, I
Well,
know
so
that,
here's the thing, they don't, the people that lose when Clearway doesn't perform and they don't maintain their site are their investors. But there's no teeth in this contract that requires them to do it unless I'm nagging them, frankly, which is what happened this past year, and saying, we need to get this fixed. And we finally got them. It's sort of like they kind of woke up and went, oh, it's not working. Right. Okay. Let us get out there and fix it. And then it took them 3 months or 4 months to fix it from the time we first started talking to them about it. But the difference is that they don't pay any differential if it doesn't work. It's their investors don't get anything, but they don't have to pay us anything when our true up bill goes up. This proposal is not allowing it to go below 90% because if it does, then Trinary has to pay us something back for however much it goes below 90% performance. And there's the incentive for them to make sure that it's being maintained. They don't want to have to pay the city, right? So they want to make sure there's high performance there.
but if we're still paying Clearway, their investors are still making money.
If
It's
I
two
may
different
make a point
companies.
of
I mean,
order,
I
that
can't do
Not
anything
the
about Clearway.
PPA,
And-
not Clearway.
Right.
And again, Clearway is back to a standard performance, I think, that you would expect after an array for 13 years.
The only thing we
Yeah,
pay
okay.
Clearway Forest is when they actually generate power.
That's the only time we actually.
That's
pay
the only time we pay them.
It's not a monthly payment
No.
on a lease.
Not my understanding. Is that correct?
That's
We only pay when they generate power.
There's a couple of different, there's the smaller number that you've seen, Councilmember Sprague, that's like $300, $400, $500. That's
Right.
like their maintenance fee. So there's that fee, and then there's the amount for actual kilowatts and for energy performance.
Okay, I was unaware of the smaller
Okay.
It's
$100.
like $400 or $500.
So would we not be better off to just eliminate and cut Clearway off altogether? And
It'd
let
be a-
that
We,
just-
we can't buy them out. It's over $1
I
million.
didn't say buy
We
them
have
out.
to-
Mayor,
disconnect
point of
from it.
order.
We have a
This
contract.
is about our
Well-
PPA, not Clearway.
You're correct.
I'm
So
sorry.
This would be about the Trinary. We have,
Yeah.
Clearway is something we
And
have
just
to
to answer
address.
the question, I think Marty's already said it, but we cannot, we're in a contract for 7 more years with Clearway. We can't just cut them out or not pay them or not, I mean, for whatever it's worth, litigation would be the next step if we didn't want to be in the contract anymore with Clearway.
And we already analyzed that to death, by the way, and realized that we did not, before our current city attorney, but realized that there's not enough teeth in the contract to make it worth the city's while to enter into litigation. Because we wouldn't have a leg to stand on.
The blend that I was trying to make with this, and you've explained it to me, not that I wanted to debate Clearway. What I was looking for, if we could just eliminate them, take them off of the grid and enter into a new contract to have an entire system with Trianair. That's where.
We would love to do that. I think Trinary would love to do that, but we wasn't successful. So, and we can't. We have a contract.
You, the city attorney will be the third or fourth attorney that has looked at this contract.
What
have-
contract?
Pardon me?
Clearway.
Which contract?
The Clearway contract. I
I-
have a stack of the invoices that we've paid 3 other law firms to look at this. They're all redacted. Even the amounts and the narratives within the invoices are redacted. So I have no idea what went on, other than I have about 3/4 of an inch of black paper of the invoices with the 3 attorney firms that we've already had look at that contract.
And we have, Prentice Long has not looked at that as
I'm
far.
sorry.
I have not looked at that contract. The council has not directed me to dive into that issue or that contract that occurred before my time.
Right.
But I know that Sean, my colleague who's on the phone, Mr. Cameron, dove and researched this particular contract extensively, and it's still in negotiations technically. So as far as if you're asking me about Clearway contract, I don't have that
That's fine.
background.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Gary?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. No, we've, as has been mentioned tonight, we've previously had extensive conversation involving the wastewater treatment plant solar array and Clearway Energy. And I won't belabor, any of that with, we beat that subject to death repeatedly here. And all of my questions have been answered in reference to the past contract. So just this question, Joe was probably more along for Jeff with Trinary. But in the staff report, the current the wastewater treatment plant is a 428 kilowatt system producing 648,000 kilowatt hours. So what's the current size of the Clearway Energy array at the wastewater treatment plant now?
It is 376 kilowatt system.
Okay, 376. Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember that. So, okay. So the proposal would be to advance that to a 428 kilowatt system. So
For a combined total of the 804 kilowatt system.
800.
Because it would be,
800.
it would be both combined together.
Yeah, very good. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Just trying to get a picture of what the approximate percentage would be for, for Clearway still. But, and just to reiterate, without belaboring the current contract at all, the original in 2010, the original contract, the original array at this wastewater treatment plant called for a 50% production output. And obviously we've had issues with, as the company has sold, several times. And there have been low producing and non-producing months, involved. But currently, I'm pleased to see this. It's been maintaining or a number of months at 47%. I remember in February at our discussions, it was holding about 47.5% roughly also, which is close to the mark where it's supposed to be. I know we've obviously there have been issues with the system. And, when we did enter into agreement with the original company, that was in 2010, solar, it was in its infancy compared to where we are today.
Gary?
It was a Cadillac system. I know, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to, yeah, I know.
Let's stay with the Trinary.
I know there. I just wanted to answer those questions that are out here floating around, not to belabor it. That's all I'm going to say about the Clearway Energy. Okay. But, when we had our February discussions initially and, Trinary attempted to negotiate with Clearway, and we were hopeful, that would be successful. Those negotiations collapsed, as have been reported tonight. And that's unfortunate. So here we are. I am at that time, obviously we were trying to get under the NEM 2 agreement before it expired. Fortunately, we've been, the current proposal calls for, we're successful with the Civic Center proposal and the fire station proposal under the NEM2 agreement. That's good news. The net billing tariff is what we'll be, unfortunately saddled with if we move forward with this agreement tonight with the wastewater treatment plant. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. It's because the negotiations collapsed. With that, if please refresh my memory, I believe we were still in February at our extensive discussion, still talking about an 18 cent per kilowatt hour charge back then, correct, Joe? It
Yeah,
was 18
correct.
18 cents per kilowatt hour. Very
Correct.
good. Okay. And of course, since February,
18.5 cents,
I think it was 17.9.
18.5.
Was it
I looked
18?
oh,
up
was it
this morning.
18? Oh, 18.5?
Mhm.
Okay. And currently 18, correct? Correct. Very good. So, yeah, that's positive. And I mean, in PG&E territory, the original rate increases, I know when I bought my solar system, about 8 years ago, it was, before I expanded it, but it was based on a 6-year, payoff, a zero bubble, if you will, with PG&E, increases of 6% per year, 5.5%, 5.5-year payoff with PG&E estimated annual increases of 6%. Well, those 6% days are out the window. That was long ago, before the PG&E issues, okay, with wildland fires and the such. But the 60 cent per kilowatt hour charges at peak with PG&E are downright frightening. But I am pleased with this 18% power purchase agreement fee, 18 cents per kilowatt hour. I am very pleased with that. And as Rick pointed out, it's even a little bit lower than it was. So that's a positive. Civic Center roof, we discussed that back in February as well. We have issues with the roof. That have been addressed over time and time again with our public works staff and other another contractor. That's a positive. What I'd like to see included in the contract when it comes before us, if we move forward with this matter tonight, would be a roof replacement, or at least work on some negotiations with a roof replacement for the fire station as well. Evan started to open that door. I think that's what we should do. Absolutely. Civic Center roof replacement's great. Let's pursue a fire station roof replacement also. We've had some roof repair issues in the past there. I'm not sure, Evan, I'm not sure the condition of the absolute condition of the current fire station roof, but it's aging. I know it's aging.
I've only seen it from the ladder truck. I've only walked
Yeah.
on it once.
Yeah.
But it's walkable.
I know there was
I
some
can't tell you
repairs.
much more than that. I'm not a roofer.
Yeah, there were some
so.
repairs on it, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I believe, but whatever they were, but I'd like to see that included. But, we're talking about significant cost savings. In an ideal world, if we could afford it, obviously, the best method of operation here would be to purchase our own solar array. We can't afford it. We can't afford that. So unfortunately, so with the power purchase agreement, that's the next best thing. And to be locked in at, year one at 18% or 18 cents per kilowatt hour with the 2.99% annual, I think it's just wise. It'd be foolish to pass this opportunity up. And, and luckily Tri-Area is stuck with us through all this, especially after our discussions in February. So I want to thank Jeff, I want to thank Tri-Area for, hanging in there with us, on this, because it is convoluted, and, it's a convoluted system we have that they're engaging in. And, with this add-on work at our treatment plant. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this tonight, just from an affordability standpoint. But like I said, let's discuss roof repairs at the fire station. So that's really all I had, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to clarify something. Looking back in February, it was 17.9 cents for the first year, 18.4 cents for the second.
Okay, 17.9. Okay, very good. So
I
we're
have
close to the ballpark.
One
Thank
question
you.
for Jeff, and that would be the degradation factor. I was told it's 0.5% in
Yes, sir.
year
That is correct.
2024 to 25, we're going to be down anywhere from 11 to 12% in production. How does that work out for us with regard to meeting the demands? Are we going to be short at PG&E in latter years of this contract?
Well, one of the issues that we have is that we're only allowed to build to 110% of your current consumption, and that is a limit that is placed upon us by the California Public Utilities Commission.
Okay, so
So,
that would make up 10% of the 12% we'd be down in year 25. All right,
yes, sir.
I'm
and
sorry,
that's what we designed, 110%?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Rick, could you clarify that because I couldn't hear that last part. Jeff.
The degradation factor of the panels is 0.5% per year.
Mhm.
Over 25 years, that's
Mhm.
12.5%.
right.
So they factored in 110%. So really, we're off 2.5% from year 20 to 25
Mhm. Yeah.
from what their production value would be theoretically.
Yeah, I believe the 110% was the same proposal in February
Right.
as well, if I remember.
It's the
right.
maximum allowed under the
Yeah,
PUC.
right, currently, yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Rick.
Extended my questions.
I couldn't hear it, thank you, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple of questions for clarity to understand a little bit better. If I understand correctly, the way I understood what you were describing on the roof for City Hall was not necessarily because the roof doesn't necessarily need to be replaced. It sounded like more it was a structural need for the weight of the new panels. Did I misunderstand that?
I believe, yeah, it needs to be repaired in order for the solar company to install
I'm-
solar on top of it.
I'm
Yes, that's correct. I believe it needs to be repaired in order for it to pass inspection for the solar company to install panels and brackets on the roof. And the
Okay.
reason that the Civic Center was brought up and not the fire department is that was what was included in the RFP at the time. And taking your notes, we'll definitely open up talks with them about the fire department roof, but that's why this one came specifically as a cost included with their proposal because it was requested by us, either council and staff, to have that roof rolled into the project.
That said, though, I want to just point out that there has been significant pooling of water on this roof. And actually, the city engineer, when we started looking at this in February, March timeframe, and we did the RFP, said, I can't believe it's not leaking because it was very significant pool of water just standing on the roof. So there potentially down the road could be other issues anyways.
Sure, okay. I just wanted to understand. The other thing, Gary, I have gone through the process and in the process of going ahead and purchasing my solar because when I did the comparison on purchasing, compared to a PPA and compared to a lease, the purchase was a nominal difference between the PPA, but it appeared to me to be a more protection for me that I own the system.
Right.
And I have a guarantee from the manufacturer and I have the installing contractor that will guarantee it for a period of time too. So have we actually looked at the cost comparison to actually own our own system as opposed to a PPA or a lease?
Yes.
Well,
Prior to,
Numbers have been discussed before, but no, of course, I did the same thing. I bought my system. I wasn't going to lease it or do a PPA but
Right.
like I said, ideally, but, and this is before Joe's time, but discussions, whether they were open session discussion or staff discussions, I can't actually recall, but the cost was enormous for purchasing such a large system at the wastewater treatment. It was a huge cost. I don't recall anywhere what the numbers were, but it was from an affordability standpoint from the city, in order because ideally, like you say, purchasing is the way to go.
right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if our PPA is going to cost us 200 and some odd thousand a year, correct? At 18, we had an estimate of $18,000 a month, multiplies out to over $200,000 a year. And I think your number that you threw out, Marty, was $1 million for us to own it or to buy it, or was that just off the top of your head?
no, that was to buy out Clearway.
Oh,
We're
to
talking
buy out
about
Clearway.
Clearway, and it's about you corrected me, Joe, 1.3. Buy them out.
Yeah, 13-year-old system.
I misunderstood. the point is, though, is in looking at that on an annual basis, it seems like we could finance a buyout, actual ownership of it or not, or can you only get those on a 5-year purchase agreement or?
Well, I mean, I think that what, Councilmember Hanson was talking about looking at in the past was even prior to my time, because that's not really
It
a
was.
conversation. That's not a conversation we've had since I've been here, so I don't have an answer for you on that. I'm not really sure about
Yes.
that.
Several years ago.
But I mean, one of the things we talked about just internally, anecdotally, is, okay, then somebody's got to maintain it. It's a big system. Do we have the staffing levels to actually clean and maintain and have the expertise to maintain solar panels in addition to the financing that would be very expensive and possibly cost prohibitive with all the other things that are hitting the sewage fund? Remember, it was operating at an operating deficit just before I started here, and we did the certificates of participation. We took out 3.3 million to make all these improvements. I mean, I guess I'm not really sure how we would really be able to finance it, even if we explored that option, frankly.
And disposal cost at the end of the term as well. I mean, that's when you purchase these things, they're hazardous waste. You don't just throw them in the trash. So there's a big cost to remove these facilities if it's on the city itself too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Joe. I never even thought about that at the end of the day.
To the public, one more time, if we may.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Dennis Asbury. One of my concerns is, what is this whole project going to cost? Everybody says it costs nothing up front, no money out of your pocket. But they're talking about, I think on the second or third page, a possible buyout in 6 years. But we have no clue what that buyout would be. $1? 2.5 million? What would the projected buyout be if we don't know what we're spending? And I can guarantee you, being a contractor for over 40 years, nobody's putting a $60,000 roof on for you for free. You know? And again, we're right up against the wire. If they're going to give you a $60,000 roof, there's no problem with them giving you $20,000 more in Bacon Davis wages. So I don't see that as a big killer.
So evidently in February is when the negotiations broke down between Clearway and Trinary. So what happened since February? Did Trinary just say last week, hey, we couldn't make a deal, so we've got to get this signed before the first of the year? Why did staff choose a company hundreds of miles away instead of someone right here in Willows? I would like some answers. I didn't hear any except for who was actually doing the negotiating that broke down. What has been going on since then? When did these negotiations break down that we had to do this tonight?
I believe Jeff, I can respond to this, correct, since it's part of the agenda?
I'm sorry, what?
I can respond, right? I'm asking legal counsel if I can respond. So I don't know if you could hear him or not earlier, but he was
Barely.
saying that, and since February, they're one of the banks that was going to be providing the capital for our project had backed out. And so they had to find a new fund to draw the money from. Am I wrong in saying that, Jeff? Is that pretty accurate?
No,
still there?
that is 100% accurate.
Okay.
That
And on
is
top of
exactly
that,
what
they
happened.
were also doing a deep dive into the Clearway contract as well, is what Jeff was saying. He was also stating that most of their energy project, their solar projects are also here in well, not here. We consider ourselves Northern Valley people, but in the Central Valley. So even though they're headquartered out of the South, I don't necessarily think that that's a good reason to say no to them. I'm assuming that this did go out to a bidding process as well.
We did an RFP at the direction of the council and only Trinary responded.
So then that would be why Trinary was getting the contract. As far as why we're not hiring somebody out of our own backyard, it's because they did not supply the information to put a bid in. And I feel like Jeff's been able to answer a lot of those questions. I do have to say there is a weird echo. I think it's from the speakers hitting the mics and things like that as well.
We could not hear most of it.
Yeah, okay. And that's why I'm repeating
Thank
it
you.
now.
Mhm.
Because I was taking notes because I knew that you did ask that question right off the bat. And so those were a couple of the things that he had mentioned as to what was their delay, as to why we're getting it now. So I just wanted
Okay,
to,
so it took months,
I just want to
months to do all this?
to be
remind-
fair, on the side of the city, we've had other items, at least since I've started in October, we've had.
Items
other
that
major
cost-
Items.
We're in public
Who knows
comment.
how much money?
Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh.
I just want to remind everybody that we're in public comment, so there shouldn't really be a dialogue. It
Right.
should be more of the public comment.
Okay,
Aren't we to get our questions answered?
No, not in public comment. I'm certainly, if that's
sorry, I
the
thought
council's,
since it was public.
Thank you,
comment,
Evan,
over
for
the
answering
item.
my questions.
council's pleasure. I just wanted to remind everyone that that public comment normally is the public commenting, and then council can respond generally, but
Okay,
usually there's no dialogue.
Okay.
No, there's never.
Correct me if I'm wrong. In the staff report, it says we use approximately 1 million kilowatts a year. Is that correct? Okay, well, now I'm just basing this off the information that Tim Salisbury provided me back in
To the microphone,
2019.
please.
Pardon. And it says that it produced 680,000 kilowatts. So everybody keeps saying 50%. I would say that's 68%, isn't it? That's just,
Obviously over
okay.
50%.
I think sorry.
And there's been so many, that's the problem with you guys talking for an hour and then us. The CHP office in Willows has a flat top membrane roof. I assume similar to this. We have drains in our roof because it is a very large building. And so if that's a concern, you put a drain in. We have several of them. I can get pictures of it for you. So instead of putting it on the roof, why don't we look at doing the like a parking structure like they did at Holiday Inn? Stay off the roofs, and that way it provides shade for our vehicles and it keeps off the roof. Thing that concerned me when the question was asked about the guarantee, I think I heard Sean said he believed that that was in there. That doesn't sit well with me. When an attorney tells me he believes that's in there, I want to know yes or no.
That would be my requirement.
Okay. Evan, good job on, you know, we got to put a roof on the fire department first. That's asinine to put the solar on, knowing that we need to put a new roof on.
But we don't know if it needs a new roof, do we? We just
No.
know that it was leaking.
Well, I thought that was what was brought up.
Well,
back
there
at
was a
the
leak. I
February
understood there was
14th.
a leak, but I don't know the extent of the leak, if it was one spot or if it was the whole roof.
I'll
needed
go back and
replaced.
listen to the audio.
I don't know what the
Okay.
response was.
But
But we will
and
pursue that.
the city manager said that we did an RFP. When was that done? Because when we had this discussion on February 21st, I had spoke with Keith Corum, a former supervisor, and he had contacted me and said that he dealt with a gentleman, Andy Roth, and he came in personally here and spoke with us and said that there was adequate time to get into the NIMS 2. That was the big rush. Oh, we got to get into NIMS 2. Now this out. Let's go out to bid then. Let Andy's company, let some other locals. Gary had mentioned that he had really good luck with a local solar company that's very, very large, probably one of the largest in the nation. Let them a chance at it. If we already lost out on NIM 2, let's go out for bid. Because I don't recall ever hearing about an RFP for this solar project.
Correct me if I'm wrong, you were on the council at that time,
I was,
and you don't recall an RFP? Why not?
no, sir.
So to clarify, after the, well, if the council doesn't want to hear a response from staff, that's fine. I don't need to say anything. I'm not a member of the public.
I was going to respond to Roberta. So please.
So after, this came before the council twice with a week separation in between with the PPA, we brought back the full PPA. After that, we talked about adding the solar panels on the Civic Center and the fire station. And those were not in the original back in February. And the council directed us to go out with an RFP for those two things, not for the wastewater treatment plant, but for the Civic Center and the fire station solar panels. And there was very little time because if you might recall, April 13th was the deadline to get into the NEM 2 program. We went out and only had 10 days to circulate the RFP. We did that. We advertised, and Trinary was the only one to respond to the RFP for solar panels on the fire station and the Civic Center. It did not include the wastewater treatment plant. You were correct about that, Jeff.
And we are locked into NEM 2 for those two projects, just for clarification.
Say that again, Joe, please.
We are locked into a NEM 2 rate because of that proposal process for the fire department and the civic center. So those projects are both on the NEM 2 plan because Trinary put money forward for an application prior to the April deadline to secure us into that program. The only one that is not is the wastewater treatment plant. And that's because negotiations again broke down with the purchase of the
Okay, so we're
Clearway
locked
agreement.
in on the two buildings.
Correct.
We are locked in.
on NEM 2, correct.
To answer Roberta's question, as I recall that the breakdown with the buyout with Clearway required that Trinary provided a $1.4 million buyout in a very short window, and they were unable to meet that requirement. It was like 5 days, something of that nature.
It was very, yes, it was
An
like,
extremely short period
maybe
of time.
10 days,
Trinary had
but
not the
yes.
capacity to meet the $1.4 million, and that's why that failed.
I didn't hear you on it. Why did it fail?
Clearway, in order to meet the full $1.4 million buyout,
Right.
required the money like on Friday, and they announced that on Monday. And Trinary was not able to produce the $1.4 million to meet that buyout in that 5-day period.
So
Short period.
Clearway was willing at one point in time for a buyout.
Yes, all along, but
They-
they wanted.
they wanted it in
1.4
48
in
hours.
this
I can't
period of
hear
time.
both of you at the same time, please. Go ahead.
You probably have a better answer to that.
Well, I was
than
just going to say that they wanted the money within 48 hours. Once the deal was signed, they wanted the money in 48 hours.
I see.
So, yeah, it was, and as you already, well, you maybe didn't hear, but as Jeff spoke to earlier, capital, there were some problems with the capital and the bank that they were working with and the funding. So they've gone back out to find new funding sources for this project. So that was all kind of happening concurrently at the same time.
Okay, so mathematically, then, Joe, maybe a question of you, mathematically, if we could buy out Clearway and get rid of Clearway for $1.5 million, and then obviously Trinary, we're having to pick up that cost with Trinary. Does the math work in favor of the city to be rid of Clearway?
I don't have a answer to that off the top of my head, but buying a 13-year-old solar array that's had problems in the past is probably not a recommended idea to save money in the long run. I'd say your kilowatt rate per hour, ride it out for 7 years, will make more sense and save you more money than buying out and being stuck with a bunch of old panels in 7 years.
Also, I'm not sure how we would buy it out because I don't think the sewage fund, there's not enough money there. We have a bond to do other work. There's not enough money there. I would highly doubt that we could buy that out.
We had $3.5 million set up that we're getting $14 million for that we don't have to spend on streets at this point.
Well, we're kind of off the subject here, so pleasure of the council. If there's no further discussion.
We was told two different numbers, that they would, the Clearways system was not producing for 6 months, then I heard 8 months. Did I hear those months incorrectly?
Jeff, I'm ballparking. I don't
Okay.
remember off the top of my head when. If you recall, there was actually no community development director here. There was a 1 day a week city engineer. He and I were working that department together, so I don't know the exact number of months. It was roughly 6 to 8 months.
But here's my
Staff-
question
staff
is
report.
that,
Let me answer the question.
Just one second,
Per
Court.
the staff report, I'm not,
okay,
I'm not opining here. From May 2022 to January 2023, it produced no energy.
okay. So
Thank you.
we was told that there's nothing that we can do. If they don't produce, they don't produce, you know, so with Trianary, they said that's 90%, but aren't we locked into whatever that Clearway does produce? We have to buy it from Clearway. Is that not correct?
That's correct.
That is correct.
Okay. So how is Clearway, pardon me, Trianary building the system for the 90%? Is it just 90% of what? Not 90% of the needs of the wastewater treatment plant, which is 1,000,000 kilowatts. It's 90% of what then?
Their
Their system.
their system was for 428 kilowatts. And Clearway is 376 and we'll have a total of 804 kilowatts
Okay,
capacity.
but that's at right now, at, like I said,
That's
this
what the
is,
capacity of the systems are designed for,
right,
as I understand it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
It would be 90% of the Trianary system.
The 428.
okay, all right. So I think what I hear from Forrest is that, if Clearway wants to, they don't produce nothing and we're paying 60 cents a kilowatt per peak. What was it, 38 cents off peak to PG&E? If you do the math on that, I think it would be better to buy out Clearway and be done with them. Because, whether we like it or not, but I would suggest that there's got to be, just like when it comes to timeshares, there's law firms that specialize in suing timeshare companies or negotiating maybe.
Well,
So
we're-
I think that we ought to seek that.
We're off the Trinary issue we're on, and yes, we have a problem with Clearway. Understood.
Mhm.
But this agenda item is with
Well,
regard
okay,
to.
well, if
the
that's the
Trinary
case, let's stay on
and the
primary.
LOI.
We're not on, we can't get NIMS two at the wastewater treatment plant, correct?
Right.
So let's go out to bid and let some other companies, because that was the big push back in February, if you recall, is we got to meet this deadline for NIMS two. We got to sign this contract. I voted no. But, here we are at the last minute again, just like it was back in February. We got to sign the contract. That's wrong. You're not even giving the council a choice of whether we sign something or don't. Oh, we got to pull the trigger. That's bad business.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question of Jeff, don't know his last name, from Trianary. Jeff, are you
Weissman.
still on?
Jeff?
I am still here. Yes, sir.
Jeff, from your perspective, not holding you, hostage on this whole thing, but give me your perspective. If in fact your company now took ownership or bought the Clearway system down there, is that somewhat salvageable and repairable and get it back up and running at an efficient cost associated with it?
Oh.
Or is that something you'd even be interested in doing?
To be perfectly frank, the
I'm-
the system that you have is a dual access tracker system. That was, going back to 2011, 2012. Dual access tracker systems have been shown to be good in theory, not necessarily great in operation. Adding the fact that mechanically they're far more complicated than, what we would use, which is either fixed or single access trackers. It's old and it has been shown to be suboptimal in its operation. If we bought it, we would rip it out and put in something that worked better. So from our position, look, I've been in energy. I've been in renewable energy since the mid 2000s. So we're coming up on 20 years. And the panel quality now is far superior than what was available at that time in the early 2010s. So we would want something that was more reliable and more mechanically robust at a better price point. That's my honest assessment.
Thank you.
And I just add that we did have this conversation before the deal fell apart back in February about what that would look like. And it was agreed that the value, the buyout that we would have to do with Clearway, the value and the worth of those solar panels in that system is not worth the buyout, not even like close. So it would be a boondoggle for Trinary to try to like pay off our contract for us and then have to rip it out and start over. I mean, it wouldn't make any good investment sense for anybody.
Okay, other
Right.
than, and I'd have to calculate the math, we're paying Clearway, what did you say, 23 cents a kilowatt hour?
24 cents, I thought.
Yeah,
Four.
let me look here. 24 cents, I think you said earlier.
24. And we're
Yeah,
paying,
currently 24 cents kilowatt, with an escalation factor over the next 7 years.
okay, well, we're paying that to them. We're going to do this with 18 cents with Pioneer, correct?
Yep.
Okay, I can't do the math in my head, obviously, to see what, if it would be worth $1.5 million or whatever we could tear it out, and let them put in new and does the math work?
I don't think it works for Trinary, and
Pardon
I
me?
don't think we can afford it, so to do it ourselves.
It works for Trinary. Could it work for Trinary? Is that what you said?
Well, I think that when NEM 2 was on the table for the wastewater treatment plant, it did pencil, and that's why we tried to buy them out, and it
I
didn't
see.
work.
Okay.
But now that we're not in NEM 2 at the wastewater treatment plant, I don't think it's a good investment for Trinary at this point. And we can't use our enterprise funds to go buy Clearway out and start over because we don't have enough money there. We don't have 1.5 million to write Clearway a check, so.
Don't have 5 million or? what?
1.5 or is it 1.3, I think we owe right now. We don't have 1.3 million in the enterprise fund to just write a check to Clearway and do all the other things that are required of the sewage fund.
I see.
Pleasure of the council.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, in order to, lock in this 18 cent per kilowatt hour rate, I think it's only the right thing to do tonight. So I move to authorize the city manager to execute a letter of intent for a solar power purchase agreement with Trinary Capital to install solar panels at the city's wastewater treatment plant, civic center, and the fire station to offset the city's PG&E bill.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Hanson and seconded by Councilmember Hudson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
I'm going to say no, but let me please qualify that. I don't have a problem with going ahead and moving forward on the two buildings, but I'm not comfortable that we have enough information, solid information to make a firm decision on the wastewater treatment plant.
To clarify, this isn't agreeing to a contract. This is to see the contract. This is for you guys to move forward so we can actually get a copy of the contract to look at.
Yes.
We're not signing anything. We're not dealing into 25 years right now. We're just trying to move forward to see the actual physical contract.
That we're going to stay engaged with Trinary and
Stay
continue with
engaged,
this,
correct.
with this official power purchase agreement.
When
Yeah,
I asked
when-
that question earlier, you said that in good faith, we're moving forward with
The letter of
Fine.
intent has certain obligations within it that's attached in the staff report. So with those things that we talked about modifying at the recommendation of the Sean, removing the confidentiality statement, and then changing it to where we're negotiating the PPA. That was his two recommendations on the letter of intent. But this letter of intent is what it states within the staff packet that we're going to deal with Trinary and not anybody else on moving this forward at a reasonable rate.
And just to, well, I guess we have a motion on the floor. Or is that-
Motion made, seconded, and passed.
And just to
3-1.
respond to a statement that Jeff made, I understand what you're saying about requoting it out. The problem is then we would lose the NEM two on the civic center and the fire department. Unless. Yeah.
Okay.
At this point, I don't know if we can piecemeal the deal, but that was so.
Well, we would probably be jeopardizing the deal
the
with
con- the-
primary. I
the
mean, it's
contract in
the whole
general,
package.
correct.
So
So with
Council's
that
discretion.
being the final issue having been voted on, I will adjourn the meeting.